What if I told you that part of your capacity for evil was inherited, built into your brain, and activated by the groups you belong to, and yet, despite all of that, you are still responsible? Today, we're exploring one of the most unsettling questions in psychology. Are human beings truly accountable for evil? If biology and the brain shape what we do? This chapter argues something very important. Human behavior, whether destructive or heroic, is not caused by one thing. It is the product of multiple interacting layers: evolutionary history, brain systems, personality traits, and beliefs about free will. So the real question becomes, at what point do explanation and responsibility separate? Let's begin with evolution. Human violence is not just cultural, it has biological roots. Research suggests that humans inherited a baseline level of lethal aggression from our evolutionary ancestors, around 2%. That may sound small, but across populations, it's significant. And here's where it gets more interesting. We evolved something called parochial altruism. This means we are wired to care deeply about our group, and at the same time, distrust or even harm outsiders. Even the hormone oxytocin, often called the love hormone, doesn't just promote bonding, it also increases in-group loyalty and out-group suspicion. So empathy itself may not be universal. It may be selective, but not everyone expresses aggression the same way. That's where personality comes in, specifically the Dark Triad: Machiavellianism, psychopathy, and narcissism. These traits share what we can call a callous core, that is, a lack of concern for others, but they differ in how they operate. Machiavellianism is strategic and calculating. Psychopathy is impulsive and emotionally cold. Narcissism is driven by ego and the need for admiration. So evolution may provide the capacity for harm, but personality determines who is more likely to use it. Now let's move into the brain. Moral judgment depends on the interaction between the amygdala, which is about emotion, and the ventromedial prefrontal cortex, which is about integration and decision-making. The amygdala acts like a moral alarm system. It generates emotional responses like guilt or compassion. The ventromedial prefrontal cortex integrates that emotion with reasoning. But when this system is damaged, something striking happens. People can still think logically, but they lose emotional guidance. They become overly utilitarian, thus making cold decisions without feeling the human cost. This is what the chapter calls acquired moral regression. Now we arrive at a very modern problem, which is, what happens when people believe their behavior is fully determined by the brain? This is sometimes called neuromania, which is over-relying on brain explanations. On the surface, this reduces blame and stigma, but there's a cost. When people stop believing in free will, they cheat more. They act more aggressively, and they conform more easily. Why? Because they begin to see their actions as inevitable, not chosen. And when that happens, something critical weakens, and that is self-control. So is there any hope? Yes, and it comes from what the chapter calls the heroic imagination. Studies of people who resisted evil, especially in extreme situations, show something powerful. They don't necessarily see themselves as heroes. Instead, they act out of habit. They feel a duty to others, and they see all people as fundamentally connected. They maintain what we can call a deep self, which is a stable set of values that doesn't collapse under pressure. Even when authority demands obedience, even when systems promote harm, they resist. So now we return to the central question, which is, if evolution, personality, and the brain influence behavior, are we still responsible? This chapter argues yes, through a framework called compatibilism. The idea is that you are responsible for your actions when they reflect your internal values and are not forced by external coercion. In other words, biology may shape you, but it does not fully excuse you. Explanation is not the same as justification, but we should also critically examine this view. Some important questions include the following. Does compatibilism truly solve the problem of determinism? If brain damage reduces moral capacity, where do we draw the line for responsibility? Could emphasizing free will ignore real biological constraints? And culturally, does this framework apply universally? These are not easy questions, and they don't have simple answers. Here's the takeaway. Human beings are shaped by forces we did not choose: our evolution, our brains, our environments. But we are also capable of something extraordinary, acting against those forces. The real question is not, are we determined? But who do we become when pressure, fear, and systems push us toward harm? Because in those moments, that's where accountability and humanity are revealed.